Hi, welcome to the Bench Movie Club. I'm Charlie.
My name's Ben.
And in this episode, we are talking about Back to the Future 2 from 1989, the sequel to Back to the Future from 1985. Starring Michael J. Fox, who's in Family Ties, Stuart Little, Frighteners, Doc Holliday, Teen Wolf, Spin City.
Secret of My Success. I've never seen that film.
You've also got Christopher Lloyd, who is started out in Taxi, and he was in Clue, Addams Family, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Page Master. You've also got
Leah Thompson,
who's in
Some Kind of Wonderful.
Yeah.
In All the Right Moves. I think she was in a film with Tom Cruise years ago. She was quite a few 80s ones that I remember.
Howard the Duck.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You got Tom Wilson as Biff, who's of course in the other Back to the Future. He's also in The Heat and Action Jackson. You've seen The Heat, haven't you? Sandra Bullock and...
Oh, yeah.
He's also in April Fool's Day.
Yes.
Yeah,
I remember he's on the poster of that. That's one of the best horror film posters from the 80s.
Yeah, when you got her hair as like a noose.
Yeah.
Haven't you?
They done quite good scary posters in the 80s. Because it'd sell basically, because people had like VHSs then, so that's what sold the film to you, was the covers. So they used to really spend a lot of time with the design.
You've also got Elizabeth Shue, because she took over from,
Of course, yeah,
the other actress.
It's a shame because I think if they'd let Elizabeth Shue be in the first one, they could just have her with her natural style. I think they tried to style her hair and stuff that didn't suit her. It didn't look right. Where Elizabeth Shue was an attractive young girl, like look at her in Adventure Babysitting. If she'd just come in like that as her natural self, then she would have been her natural self in the second film.
And they wouldn't have had to reshoot.
No.
Because obviously at the end of Back to the Future, you got the Doc comes back and says, we've got this back to do with your kids. And obviously they had to reshoot all that for part 2 because they'd lost...
Her hair always looked a bit dodgy to me. I don't know what it was. I don't know. It didn't look like her sort of thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, she's in Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Eventually Babysitting, of course.
Yeah, Karate Kid.
Yeah.
We've also got James Tolkien. I think he's Strickland. He's in War Games, Top Gun, Masters of the Universe. And there's quite a few other sort of, I'd say cameos, but they weren't really famous then anyway, but smaller parts. You've got Billy Zane, isn't it? He's one of Biff's gang, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
You got Charles Fleischer. Now, he was... Do you remember I sent you that video yesterday? Did you watch it? TikTok video?
What video?
Right, so in part 2...
he plays like an older...
Yeah, because I always thought it was a bit weird, because in part 2 you see a guy come up and go, hey kid, blah, blah. He's clearly someone who's been aged.
To look older.
And I always used to think, who is he?
Yeah, I've always thought that, but then I forgot about it as soon as he's disappeared off the screen because then other things are happening. Yeah. It was only when you pointed that out to me, I remember at the time thinking he's obviously someone from earlier on, but who is he? Yeah.
But he's actually from later, because you see him, he was basically the guy who was cleaning out the manure for Biff. So you see him later on arguing with Biff, saying, no, Biff, it's just horse manure who's in here, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you see that in the deleted scene, didn't you?
Yeah, in the deleted scene, he comes up and says, this guy, and they start bickering like a couple of old men. So that is something which obviously, them taken out of it, you think, well, they would otherwise got an older person. But do you know what else he's known for?
No.
He's Roger Rabbit. He's the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Oh, is it the voice? Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Yeah.
You got Jason Scott Lee is one of the gangs in the future. Jason Scott Lee played Bruce Lee in the Dragon film.
Okay.
Elijah Wood in his first ever film.
Elijah Wood, I know the name.
Lord of the Rings and Faculty. He was like the little boy in Faculty.
Oh, okay. Who's he in this?
He's the boy at the gun machine. He goes, that's like a kid's game.
Oh, is that him? Okay.
Yeah, went on to be huge. He's in Sin City.
Good thing to start off in, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's not bad. And you got Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who they introduce as a character. He's his friend who, in this one, he sort of bullies Michael J. Fox into doing like something illegal, and he ends up getting fired. Yeah, he's like, the jits will never find out. No, put your card in the thing.
Yeah.
And then you see him in
part... Is he out in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, is he?
Yeah, he's the bass player from Red Hot Chili Peppers. But he's also, in part 3, he's the one who's going to race with him. at the very end.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
there's the automobile
Yeah.
accident. He's like, oh, getting all
And that's how it all stemmed from that crash.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So basically, Back to the Future Part 2 picks up from the first one, but obviously it takes them into the future where they're trying to sort out Marty's kids because something happens to his son getting arrested. So Doc says, you've got to basically infiltrate, dress up like how you're dressed and say no to Biff. But obviously for a series of events, like with other Back to the Future films, stuff happens which changes the whole timeline and they have to try and sort it out.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when this first came out, I think we see it in the cinema.
Yeah, Mum took us to the cinema to see it. And I remember there was such a long pause for this. They eventually, I don't think they actually intended on making a sequel.
No.
And it was just that bit at the end where to be continued. But obviously, why would they put that if it wasn't to do a sequel?
Well, in the original theatrical Back to the Future, they didn't put to be continued. It was added.
They set themselves up for it then.
Yeah.
Then people going, well, where's part 2?
They added that
Yeah.
when it came out on VHS.
It was so big, Back to the Future, when it came out. Do you remember how big it was?
Yeah, I remember people, because it's brilliant. The first one's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this part 2 as well. But obviously the first one, I think, is one of the best films, definitely of the 80s.
And it's such a clever film, and it's such a... It's an interesting idea.
And
to
it's
go back
perfect,
and see
really.
parents at the same age as yourself when you're a teenager, and like they sit there saying, "Oh, we never done things like this," and then you sort of get to see what they really like.
And it's like a universal thing that people, I think everyone sort of can relate to. I wonder if I met my parents when they were my age, especially when you're a teenager, you think, I wonder if we'd get on. I wonder if they'd like me. Would they like me? I mean, they have to like me because I'm their child. But would they like me if I wasn't their child? If I was just a stranger who turned up at their school?
Yeah.
And I think it's such a universal sort of thought that everyone wonders at one point. I know, my parents say they love me, but do they really? Or do they think, oh, what an annoying little prick. If he weren't my son, I wouldn't have anything to do with him. Well, my mum says that to me all the time anyway, but, so that was what's so great about the first one. So, and the way they ended it, going, oh, something's got to be done about your kids. It sort of left it open-ended.
Yeah, they set themselves up for it then, because they could not make a sequel.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They had to, because number one, it was so successful, and it's such a hard act to follow as well, because it was so successful. You had to do the right thing with it. Now, I do personally think this film was brilliant.
Yeah.
But I do think that part 2 and 3 should have been this film, but made longer.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should have gone into the Wild West. I think that part 2 should have been all about the future.
Yeah.
And at the end, sort of then going back, and then it's realised it's made the dodgy 1985, and then he's going to have to go back to then the third film will be then going back to the future again, into the future, and then finding out how it all went wrong going back, that Biff obviously took the...
Yeah, so when they go to the dystopian 85,
Yes.
because this one, they think they travel the most.
Yeah.
Because obviously at the very beginning, they're in 1985, then they go to 2015, then they go back to dystopian 1985, and then they go back to 1955, then the Doc gets sent back to 1885, even though you don't see it, and then Marty's talking about having to go back to... So it's quite a lot of movement. But yeah, I agree. I've always thought it was so much they could have done.
The third one is good. I don't get me wrong. I like the third one. And when I watch it, I think, oh, it's a nice film. I just think it's just so far apart from...
It's the weakest of the three, because the first one has a fantastic idea about going back in time, and you doing something in the past will change the future. And it's actually... You know what? There is actually two different timelines in the first one, which loads of people forget about, because before he goes back, his family's just like some loser family. All his brothers and sisters are losers. His dad's a big loser, and his mum's sort of like depressed. Like, look at the life I'm stuck with.
Drunk sort of thing, isn't she?
Then him interfering when he goes back, that's a different 1985, because they're all rich now.
Yeah.
Biff's now getting bossed around by George. So it's actually a different timeline, like what they complain about in this one, where it's a dystopian future. So there's actually 3 different 1985s that you see.
I just think they could have concentrated so much more on all the futuristic stuff. I think they could have had so much fun with that. They've done a lot with it. Obviously, it's not what the future was, because we've now passed that date. And at the time when this come out, that was such a long way away in the future that we thought, I wonder what it's going to be like. But then when you got to that time in the future, there was a couple of things that probably
Well, it's the same gap, isn't it? There's him going back to 55.
Yeah.
Because it's a 30-year gap, isn't it? 55 to 85. So they just thought, well, imagine what 30 years' time from now will be like. That's why they thought flying cars, hoverboards and stuff. If they actually see what 2015 was like, they would have gone,
No, they wouldn't be able to have fun with it. No. And also the fact that no one knew what it was going to be like at that point. Everyone thought, oh, well, this is what the future is going to be like. But yeah, it was nothing like that. But they could have had so much fun with that. They could have messed around with the future thing. They could have had a little bit more storyline in there. They could have concentrated the whole second film on the future. I think that personally for me, I think would have been a better idea.
I think how I always envision it, I think the first one's perfect. I wouldn't change the first one. The second one, I would have had half the film in 2015, so you get to see a lot more of the future. You know, they could have had all those bits they cut out, they could keep them in it. And then, like you said, then the second half of the film will be dystopian 1985. You think, we're halfway through the film, how have they gone back to 85? So you'd see more of that sort of broken
rundown, broken world,
There's scenes where you see his brother again. Because his brother
and his mum has had like the boob job and all that kind of stuff, and she's living with Biff, and that's you know, so they could have concentrated more on all their families. Yeah,
and I would have ended part 2 with him where he jumps off the roof, they knock out Biff, and they go, "We've got to go back to 1955. I don't believe it." And then them go.
And
see if from the air,
included.
And then part 3, I would have spent so much more time in old 1955. I had a lot more fun of him sneaking about. It could have paralleled the first film. It could have been, he could have seen a lot more of what you see from the first film, but like have where they shoot him, sort of him sneaking about.
Yeah.
Because they used some footage from the first film, but loads of it they just had to reshoot from different angles.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously they couldn't use Crispin Glover again because he didn't want to come back, did he?
No.
Do you know why?
Because he didn't agree with something in the storyline.
Yeah, I think he didn't agree with how the first one ended. He felt as if him going back and finding his family all rich, and it was a happy ending. He was sort of like, no, they shouldn't be happy that they've got money. It should be something else.
Right.
Yeah, and
I don't think it was just about they had money. I think it's just about they made the best of themselves as people. Like, she was like run down, drunk, sort of depressed, miserable, and he was a weakling, and the kids didn't have no goals. I think they just basically was just making the best of themselves. And I don't think it was about the money. It was just that they suddenly found a new.
Yeah, but he didn't like that for some reason. He thought it sent out the wrong message. As if you should be content with who you are, even if you are.
You should be content with who you are, but then be the best version of yourself. Yeah. That's what you should achieve. That's what you should try and aspire to.
But I mean, that moment. There's so many fantastic moments throughout, like the trilogy. But going back to part 1, like the bit where George McFly finally punches Biff.
Yeah, yeah.
And you think that key moment is such a big deal in his life.
And I like the part.
Him growing a backbone, and then you got that. Scream McFly trying to dance with him.
I like the part with this where he gets to see it as well.
Yeah,
he goes because he missed it the first time round, so he goes, I'm going to see my dad knock out Biff.
Yeah, because he was locked in the car the first time round, wasn't it? He literally just came round the corner after Biff fell to the floor, so you would want to, you'd go, oh wait, I've got to go see this, I've got a chance. And moments like that are fantastic, and I think this is a worthy sequel to the first one.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And as I say, the third one is a good film. I mean, I personally, maybe because I'm not that big fan of Wild West, but even though I watch it, and it is a good film, I'm not slagging the third film, but I think that it would have been so much better if we had sort of stretched out this film into like two films.
Which they probably could have done, because Robert Zemeckis, who of course directed this, we was talking about with Death Becomes Her, done like a 2.5 hour version of that. He's probably got like
could have added a lot more.
There's probably like a 3 hour version of Back to the Future 2.
Couple more scenes, couple more characters or something. You could have added a few more humorous bits in it, and just sort of played around with the future. And we didn't know what the future was going to be then, didn't we? So
it was Michael J. Fox who wanted to go to the West, the Wild West. But even if they'd done that, what they could have done is part 3 could have had half of that in 55 and just have some of it in the Wild West.
I just don't think the Wild West at all. I think it should have just stayed between 55 to 2015.
I think it's more appealing when it's in people's lifetimes. Even though 55 ain't in my lifetime, it was in our mum's lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's still modern times. You think,
we don't know anyone from cowboy era. No, they're all dead.
They might as well go back to the plague. They might as well go back a couple of 100 years.
I think you need to have someone, or need to have at least someone that knows that era.
Yeah, so you can turn around and go, is that what it was like in the 55? And they can go, wow, there, that is. Whereas 1885, they're like, it's probably a nice idea on paper, but it just, and also I didn't like all the love story with the Doc and...
It's just Mary Steenburgen.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it just went a bit. Yeah, I think it was a good film, but it wasn't to the same standard as the first two.
No, and what was great about the second one is it was like, oh, what if? And people watching things and going, imagine if we do have flying cars, or the hoverboard, which famously, because there was for the promotion of this. Someone in one of the promotions, they said, yeah, the hoverboard technology exists, it's just we couldn't use it because parents had complained about it. They made out as if, and people believed it. So
I believed it.
People were writing to Mattel saying, and because of that, and this is before the internet, rumours spread, no, the hoverboards are real, but they're not allowed to release them because kids get injured. And everyone was like, what? I want one. I'll pay however much money you can. Of course, it doesn't exist. The technology, that kind of technology.
Did they bring the trainers out that sort of do themselves up? Didn't they bring them out recently, like a few years back? Yeah,
they did. They brought them. I think it was around about 2015, because in 2015 they re-released in the cinema the trilogy to coincide with the date that he goes to in the future. And I've actually got my ticket still from when I went there. This was at Cineworld. Wednesday, 21st of the 10th, 2015. So it was the whole trilogy.
And you went on the actual day. Is that the date?
That was the date. It was only being shown that one day, and it was packed cinema. It was great.
I can imagine.
Well, the thing is, they was also showing it on TV, all three films. And what happened? I watched the first one and the second one. I started to watch the third one, but I was falling asleep, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. And I walked out, and loads of people did. So that's what
I'm saying. I think that's it's.
Like, you want to see the end. You want to know how the story ends. Because obviously part 2 ends with
I think it's so different from the other two.
Yeah.
It's so different. It's a completely different genre completely. I know you've got 50s is different to 80s and to the 2000s. But I think it's so far removed. Like 100 years.
Yeah,
it's too far removed.
Because there was other sequels, other ideas they was thinking about. There was one point they was thinking of going back to the 60s instead. So you're seeing George and Lorraine slightly older.
See, I'd rather that.
Yeah, I'd
rather that. That would have been better.
Yeah, and he coming back, and then him having to sort of try and make himself look a little bit older, because otherwise they go, you haven't aged at all. We've both aged 10 years and stuff. All these ideas that they floated with, and in the end they went, no, we won't do that. And I think that's a shame, because again, something in our lifetime could have worked a little bit better. And the good thing is, though, what I like about the difference of culture between 1950s and 1980s is, if they tried to remake this film, it wouldn't be as effective. Because if you went back 30 years from now, it'd be 1994. And you think, if you showed up in 1994, you'd be like, it's not that. What big difference? You know, there's not a big difference. And because of the introduction of the internet, we know more about things from the 90s. We know, whereas back in 85, him going back to 55 as a kid, he's a teenager, isn't he? Marty McFly. He's like, what's going on? Yeah, I want a Diet Pepsi or something like that, or Pepsi free. And they're like, no, you got to pay for it. So it's all these little in jokes, because it's completely different culture shock. Whereas the last 20 years, say example, nothing's changed. No. It's just so subtle, the changes,
Yeah, no, I love the film though. I think it's a fantastic film. I mean, do you know if there's probably quite a lot cut out?
Yeah, I've seen loads of deleted scenes, like we said about that guy walking along with the one who's saying about Biff and having a little to and fro with Biff. I know when he's dystopian future, he runs into his brother outside. His brother's like a pisshead, and he's saying to him like, what are you doing back from Europe? Because Marty's supposed to be in Switzerland. He goes, oh, so you and Mum are talking again. So he's supposed to, so it gives you a little bit of background. Him and Lorraine have fallen out. So there is a lot of stuff. I reckon, in fact, if they done like, if they digitally enhanced all the deleted scenes, they could probably recut it like how we said. Stretch out part 2 so it ends with him jumping off the car. And then having the second half of it stretched out, take up half of part 3. And then I would take the Wild West and just cut it right down, streamline it, so you just make it like very quick. And it's because you get bored sitting in the Wild West, You know, because especially where part 2 spoils you, it's got 3 different places. 2015,
Oh, this is a good sequel.
1985.
This is a really good sequel,
Yeah.
as I say, for such a successful film in '85.
To live up to that.
To live up to that was really good. I remember coming out of the cinema going, "Wow, that was really good."
Can't wait for the third.
I remember, Mum taking us all. She didn't really take us to cinema a lot, but I remember she did. There's a few times when she did take us.
Yeah.
Were like big sort of films.
Yeah, because she wanted to see it, and at the time, I mean, I'm a big fan of Robert Zemeckis anyway. There's very few times that he does a misstep. You know, some of my favourite films he's made, and along with Alan Silvestri, his composer, some of those moments just like, it is so clever, these films. Like little moments where he says, "Oh yeah, like oh, he told me one more thing. This kid or a wide-eyed scientist would come up to me, and if he ever did, and pulling out the gun, and you feel, what's he going to do? How's he going to get out of there?"
And then jumps off the roof, and you're like,
yeah, it's like, you're baffled, like Biff is. It's so clever, like the little things they do, or him getting chased while he's on a hoverboard, and you think he's not going to outrun that car. There's so many great little moments, one after the other, that it's like breakneck.
It's a good homage to the first film.
Yeah, it's like a love letter to the first film. It's introduced new stuff, but then going back to the past.
It's a shame that Elizabeth Shue, as I say, wasn't in the first film, then, rather than the other actress, or the other actress being in the second film. One or the other, either one of them. But then, there's something about Elizabeth Shue's hair where they've tried to make her hair look like the other girls. It just don't look like Elizabeth Shue. Like, Elizabeth Shue was attractive. Look at her in Adventure Babysitting. That's what she should have looked like in this film. And she would look fantastic, like with her curly hair or whatever. You know, so...
And Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, when they made part 2, when they made part 1, they had no intention of making a sequel.
No.
So when he goes, "Oh, she can come too, it's about your kids," then when they had to sit down and write part 2, they thought, we don't really want to use her as a character. Nothing against her, but the story is Doc and Marty. So they dug themselves into a hole by accident, not thinking they'd ever have to do it. Obviously, with Crispin Glover not returning because of what we said before, that's why they done the whole thing with George McFly getting shot. So they haven't got to use him as much. As a kid, I never knew he wasn't in it. Like when you got him hanging upside down.
It sounds like him.
Yeah, it's really
like
clever because they actually had a mould of his face.
Yeah, that's why I tried to sue, didn't they?
Yeah, well, he did succeed. Well, he sued them, but they done an out-of-court settlement because they was using his likeness later in the film. Like you see a bit of him dancing in the gym, but it's only watching it after knowing of them trying to avoid using him. You think it's very clever.
I remember thinking at the time he was a bit of a knob.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know the full story to it. I mean, it's like, you know, but
apparently he was quite awkward to work, but he was
quite
very
arsy,
serious. He's very serious about
actor.
his. Yeah, I mean, you already had Eric Stoltz was very serious in the first one, and they got rid of him because he was a bit too, you know, he apparently him hitting Biff and Biff thinking, right, I'm going to Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson thinks, right, there's a scene where I hit you, I'm really going to level you. But then they changed him to Michael J. Fox. And you can't imagine anyone but Michael J. Fox.
No, definitely not.
He'd actually, with this one as well, he'd forgotten how to ride a skateboard. And he was finding trouble with things, which at the time he just thought, oh, it's just where I haven't ridden a skateboard for 4 years. But it was only retrospectively, he sees it as early signs of his Parkinson's.
Oh, right.
And I know in part 3, there's a bit where he's sort of limping along.
Yeah,
where he's
I always thought that was
chased.
part of it. That was his Parkinson's.
That was his Parkinson's.
That's sad.
Yeah, but again, at the time, he had no idea. And it was just things like with a guitar.
For a film thing as well, it's lucky they filmed it when they did. So I know, it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, he's well known about his Parkinson's.
I mean, he's still worked since then, but I think another thing...
He was so young as well. He was only like young and very sort of... It just shows you, doesn't it? You know, you never know what's around the corner.
So they shot this one and part 3 back to back, didn't they? So when part 2 ends, it shows like a little trailer of part 3, which is a bit of a downer in the mouth because I know what comes in part 3. So when I see that, and I think it's not as good. It's still good. I enjoy it, and if I'm watching the films,
I will watch it. I have watched all 3 of them after each other before.
But part of me thinks, well, there was a 4-year gap between 1 and 2. If only they'd done part 2 and then left it.
They wouldn't have been able to because of his Parkinson's.
Well, they would have, because he did still work on Mars Attacks and Frighteners, and
when did it start kicking in with his?
Well, it was back then, but he still worked. I mean, he still works now, but it wasn't really noticeable until like the late 90s. So say if you wait, this was 89, so say about 93 If they'd done Back to the Future 3 in 93, he would have known that he'd had Parkinson's, but, you know, he would still been able to do, like, most people wouldn't have noticed. Like in Frighteners, you don't know that he knows he's got Parkinson's in Frighteners and in Mars Attacks, but you don't know as a viewer. No. You look and think, oh, well, he just looks the same as always. Because this is the other good thing about him. He always looks young.
He always looks so young,
He's like baby face.
He looks really young in this film. He didn't look no different from this one to the first one.
I think he's about like 5'4", something like that. So
he's only small, he's only small. The tunnel where they where Biff chases them through is the same tunnel they used in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
See, I can see that. As soon as you said that, I thought...
So that's the Doc in both of them films, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's the tunnel into Tombland, isn't it? Yeah. Although that was nearly Tim Curry, wasn't it? The Doc in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was going to play the Judge Doom.
Who was?
Tim Curry.
Oh, was he?
He was going to be Judge Doom. Good. Well, they said he was too scary.
Good. Yeah, actually, he would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
And the date of the newspaper is October the 22nd, which is Christopher Lloyd's birthday.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, also the Leah Thompson took home the mould of her breasts because they was moulded on her actual breasts and she didn't want to fall into the wrong hands. So
she probably wanted to wear them as well.
Yeah.
Whenever she wants a bigger set.
Yeah, they were big, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were like sort of Kenny Everett, you know.
That is funny, though.
You know, was it Cupid Stump?
Yeah.
Like that kind of.
And he's like, Mum, you're so...
Big.
So big.
Yeah, brilliant film.
No, and she also, because obviously we're reshooting 55, they obviously had to shoot different angles, and say like her prom dress, or for the Enchantment Under the Sea, she had that dress. They had 3 of them, they couldn't find any of them. And I was thinking... Well, they was going to it delayed production a little bit, and then she turned around and said, "Well, I've got one. I took one home with me."
Oh, yeah.
So they went, "Oh, fantastic! Can you bring it?" So the dress she's wearing is the actual one that she was wearing anyway.
Oh, excellent! Yeah. Well, that's good. So she won both films.
So she's a kleptomaniac. So you imagine in one room she's got breasts hanging up, dress. There was a short movie called Back to the Future. Doc Brown Saves the World from 2015, and it came out in 2015, but he explains, he comes up with this thing where he says that due to things like hoverboards and that hydrated food, when they stick the pizza in and it grows up, that leads by the year 2030, everyone's super obese and people are dying. So he decides to go back in time and stop the creation of the hoverboard and hydrated food, which explains why we never got them in real life. So it's sort of retconning it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And Griff's hoverboard, which was called a pitbull, wasn't it? That was originally going to be called a Mad Dog, as a hint towards part 3, because he's Mad Dog Buford. Bifford Tannen. Yeah. Because they do have a lot of things in the second one which hint towards the Wild West, like him playing the Wild West game, and you see like briefly at the casino, and I think that's fine, but...
Yeah. Oh no, listen, look, the third one is good. The third one is a good film, but I just feel that it could have been so much more if they just concentrated on these decades. I think that would have been the best. They could have done a really good, because they could just flesh it out more. There's enough footage there. There's enough there for them to be sort of to play with. Do you know what I mean?
Have you seen any of the deleted scenes and stuff?
I probably have, but I can't think.
There's a bit where, Biff, when he brings the car back to the future, and he gets out, he's like, he drops his cane in there, and he seems like he's in pain.
And he disappears, doesn't he?
Well, he doesn't in the theatrical one, but you'd have seen that in the deleted scene, he falls behind a thing and disappears. But that's not in the theatrical version.
Ain't it?
No.
I've seen that then. I must have seen it then.
And the reason it was meant to be like similar to what happens to Marty in 1955, because where he's given Biff the almanac...
He's now changed his future.
But not just that.
But then how could he have come back to the future?
No, because he's come back to the future, but it's only once he's arrived in the future. Because it doesn't happen instantly, does it?
As soon as he would have given the almanac, he would have disappeared.
No, because when you think part 1, where Marty's interfered with things and the things are slowly disappearing on the photo. So it's like it's slow. It doesn't happen instantly, but it happens slowly. And he's come back to the future, and it's not that he's changed the future, because you think they've all been disappearing.
Yeah.
He's changed his fate, because what happened? Because Marty's disappearing in the first one because he never existed. Biff's disappearing in part 2 because what they'd written was when he gives the almanac to Biff, obviously he's abusive to Lorraine, isn't he? Hits her, throws her about and stuff. In 1996, she has enough and she kills him. She shoots him. So that's why Biff wouldn't exist in the year 2015.
Oh, right. So he's actually dead at that point.
He's actually
That's
dead.
interesting to know.
Yeah.
That's a good way of... yeah, okay. So I just thought it's just because there's a new version of him.
Yeah, I used to think that. But then I always used to think, well, if he's disappearing, surely everyone there is the same thing.
Because he says it spirals out of control because of one thing that happens, then the whole family just sort of falls apart.
But he said, no, it's different timelines, isn't it?
Oh, there's different timelines.
The Biff on that timeline,
right, yeah, I guess
because of what he's done, is now dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. It's a really good film, though. I don't think they should ever remake it. I think if they remake, but they probably will, probably about 10, 20 years' time.
But this is the thing, I can't see them being able to do it because there's not a big cultural change. You know, people back in the 80s would look back at the 70s and think, wow, what a completely different era. And it's only 10 years.
Yeah.
If you went back 30 years now...
Yeah, 90s, as you said, not really much difference.
I mean, 90s is slightly culturally different, but...
Yeah. I think from the 2000s onwards, it's not really changed too much.
No.
Which is quite sad, really, because if you think 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they're all so different from each other. And you can like go to a fancy dress party in one of them decades and you'll know which decade you're coming from. You could dress up from anything from 2000 to now. I don't think don't get me wrong, there's been lots of good music and good films and there's been lots of good stuff, but it's sort of like there's no sort of like you wouldn't be able to go from decade to decade. You wouldn't be able to go, oh, well, that's definitely early 2000s. That's definitely 2000 to 2020 sort of times. And also, how do you say it as well? Like, is it not the 20s again? 30s?
It would be. Well, this is the thing. If they shot it now and they was going into the future, it'd be 2054.
So are we back in the 20s? Is it?
We are in the
20s?
Yeah, we're in the 20s now, but it's not the 20s that people are fond of.
I always think 20s. I think the Roaring 20s.
Yeah, like
Gatsby and all that. I think that's a lot more enjoyable than these 20s. I'm sure a lot of people would agree.
Oh yeah. Astrophysicist Carl Sagan considered this the greatest time travel movie ever made.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film.
Like part 2 specifically, because how it concentrates so much about
it's clever.
Changing things.
It is clever. And if you think 89 as well, the technology wasn't that great in 89.
No.
And they've done pretty well. It's still aged pretty well.
Oh yeah, because I remember I actually watched the original trailer for part 2 as well, and it's mad how I remember seeing the trailer because it was what got everyone hyped.
Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Michael J. Fox.
More like a couple of teenagers, you know?
And Michael J. Fox.
Mom, is that you?
Steven Spielberg presents a Robert Zemeckis film, Back to the Future, Part 2.
It's mad how we remember things like that. How long ago was that? Only 30 odd years ago.
But that was a great trailer, and it's it's probably why the film. I mean, the first film was the best advertisement for part 2 because everyone was so excited about part 1. But I'm so glad they didn't drop the ball with the second one.
No.
The football scores that they're talking about was actual ones. No, when he's in the car and he goes,
I would have thought that would have been.
they're gonna win.
I thought that would have been.
You lost, old man. He's a great bully. Biff. Tom Wilson's fantastic in the whole trilogy, I think.
Give us our ball back!
What ball?
That ball!
What ball are you talking about?
Give us our ball!
Ball! Is this your ball?
Yeah!
Is this your ball? You want it back? Go get it!
Claudia Wells, who was the original Jennifer, was unable to reprise her role as she had stopped acting because her mother had been diagnosed with cancer. She returned to acting for independent films in 2008 called Still Waters Burn.
I can understand. I know there's quite a few actors, like famously Rick Moranis.
He stopped, for years.
He stopped
really
because
successful,
his
wasn't
wife, I think, died, and he decided to stay at home and raise his kids.
Which is an honourable thing.
Fair play to him, yeah. You know, good on him. There's something else which they retroactively changed about part 1, which you didn't even realise. You remember you see in this Biff spiking the punch?
Yeah.
Doesn't he? He spikes the punch.
Yeah.
George McFly drinks that punch. So what's happened? He's drunk the punch.
That's why he
and
punched him.
that's why he's a little bit more
Yeah.
sort of brave when he's like,
Yeah.
"You get your damn hands off
Yeah.
her." You know,
Oh, I love that first film.
Yeah.
It's just such a feel-good film.
perfect.
I remember watching it. I can't remember when I first. It would have been on a dodgy video copy at some point. You know, that's why we've got most of films.
Yeah, taped it off the telly or
Yeah,
something.
no, it had been before it was on telly. But I remember we used to go to the Welcome Holiday Park in Dawlish. I remember it was played there, and then they had it on there, which also would have been a copy. But
Yeah,
I loved it.
it's such a good film. Good. The thing is, part one you can watch on its own, and it's a standalone film. It's the only downside about part two. It's not a standalone film because how it ends.
It's in the middle as well, isn't it?
It's sort of like the Doc's gone back, you know, which is great. I love all that thing. That's another good thing about this. I liked how they done that. So he gets struck by lightning, and you think, oh God, what's he going to do? Because Mum, who forgets everything, we watched it yesterday, and it's weird watching part two without first watching the first one, and then not watching the third one to say it finished, just watching it on its own. But when that happens, when he gets struck by lightning, Mum's like, but he's stuck. He's stuck in 1955. How can he come back? And then you got the Western Union guy turn up, says he's told us to deliver the note at this exact time at this exact place, and you think, and I think that's a nice little touch how they've done that. As a kid, I didn't quite understand because I was looking, thinking, who's this man? How they sort of said it, but it is a clever way for Doc to tell Marty that he's okay, and he buries the DeLorean. So in that time, in 1955, when Marty's about to go back, I think there's 4 DeLoreans, because there's the original one from 1985, like the first film where he goes back in time, and he's got the car throughout the whole film, and then Doc sends him into the future. Right. Then you've got the one where they went back again to 1955.
All right.
But at the same time, what you don't realise is there's also there'd be Biff's one, because Biff's gone back to 1955 in the DeLorean, so that's 3 DeLoreans. And then you've got the one that's been buried there since 1885.
Right.
So you've actually got 4 DeLoreans at the same time, 4 time machines. Yeah.
Okay.
Just realised that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so it's a good film. Really good film. So
I hope none of the films get remade. If they want to make other time travel films, that's fine.
I don't think even if they did, they would last for a couple of years and they'd disappear, like they've done.
Like all sequels.
All sequels.
Yeah.
When they remake something, they come, they go, and then they disappear, and the originals outlast them all because the originals are the best ultimately.
And I think this was such a great. The 80s was such an optimistic time in a way, because I remember when this came out, and you could believe that's what the future was going to be. You thought, of course there'll be Jaws 19, all 3D, because 3D actually did have a big, during 2015, 3D was quite huge. They brought 3D back, hadn't they?
Yeah,
remember
they've never really sort of nailed it though, have they?
No, but you remember, like, throughout the 90s, no one done 3D. It was like, no,
I
it's
remember
a dead
my
thing.
time, it was 3D glasses, which is the red and green.
Yeah, but then they brought out the new ones, which actually did work for quite a few people, and it had that big spell throughout the 20-teens where it was used. So that was right when they said about Jaws down 3D in the sense that, and also even though it weren't Jaws 19, we are obsessed with sequels now. Everything is sequels, so they got that right. There's a drone walking a dog. Do you remember? And that was before the invention of drones, so they got that right. So there is actually, if you go through it,
it's probably quite a lot. But they could have done so much more. They could have added so much more to this, and they could have really sort of fleshed it all out. But fantastic film. I love the film and love the franchise.
And it was so colourful. This is the other thing. I think that was their 80s mentality. They thought, look how colourful we are now. We're bound to be more colourful. If anything, everything's grey.
More grey and drab.
Yeah, because I was actually looking for a red shirt like Doc wears with all the Japanese writing, and even just now I was in the supermarket looking at the clothes section, and I thought everything is so grey and it's just dark colours because no one wants to be outlandish anymore. No one wants to wear bright things.
No.
So it was never going to come to fruition that people walking about looking like Michael Jackson and stuff like that. You know.
No.
Although also people did in the noughties, people were becoming more obsessed with the 80s as well. So the Cafe 80s is a realistic sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Back to the Future. IMDb,
Yeah.
it got 7.8 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's okay. Rotten Tomatoes, by the critics, it got 63%.
That seems a bit.
It is quite low. Audience 85%. So
Yeah. I mean, maybe the critics are looking at stacking it up against the first one, and where the first one has a start, middle, and end, and it can be the same. As I said, with this, it doesn't. They might have just been quite cynical on it and saying, "Oh, it's just making money." But I thought it was really good.
Well, the budget was 40 million,
It's good, really.
and it made
Yeah.
332.5 million.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
a good return.
Yeah.
Very good
fantastic
return.
Very profitable.
But yeah, fantastic films. As I say, like 80s films in general were fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I loved growing up in the decades that I grew up in, really, because I think I was good ages for experiencing a lot of this stuff that was thrown at us at them times.
But your Marty McFly impression's rubbish.
I know it is.
Go on, do Marty.
What was he doing?
Well,
No,
hey,
I-
Doc.
No, I didn't.
You mean the time machine?
DeLorean?
Yeah.
Marty!
Yeah.
He wears white hair.
If for that, I'm a more realistic one. He'd be bald by now. But he also, obviously, the Back to the Future franchise influenced Rick and Morty. I'm sure you don't watch that.
No.
But it's a very popular animated series.
That's like Doc and Marty, yeah.
Yeah. It's so it's relevant now, but they deliberately avoid doing time travel in that.
Okay.
Because so many other people have done it since Back to the Future. No one really thought about time travel since this series. Yeah. So next week is October, and we're going to focus on horror films, aren't we? But we thought we would start off with deciding which decade was best for horror.
I'm going 70s.
I think 80s, but someone else who's thrown her hat in the ring, Lily, thinks 90s. Which I can see, I can think of a few 90s ones. So she's going to join us.
Well, we'll see.
With 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Oh, no, 60s has got some good ones. It's got Rosemary's Baby. It's got Whatever Happens, Baby Jane.
Yeah. Well, this is the
Psycho.
But also with the, you could say that for the noughties. There are some.
Yeah. There's no.
I think them decades.
I think
70s,
there's something
80s,
about the 70s. There's something about, for me, something about the 70s and the look and the feel and the filming of everything. I just feel that it's quite raw, and they seem like that was when it started to me. That's when it really sort of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love
You
the
don't
80s.
agree? Yeah.
I think the
you're more
80s pips the 70s and.
So that's probably our age group, though. That's probably
Possibly.
because like you grew up on horror films. Obviously, you watched horror films when you was young because I let you. I
You made
showed
me.
you some, but then I also watched horror films because I don't know what mum and dad was doing. They used to let me watch horror films. I don't know why, but that's just.
I think it's to
70s
scare
parents,
you
isn't it?
into bed.
No, they didn't care. They'd just be sitting around. I'd be sitting there watching like sort of Friday the 13th or not Exorcist because that had been banned at the time. Like Halloween and like horror films. Happy Birthday to Me. I remember seeing something like that, and just scary films. American Wealth in London. I remember that when that came out.
I have nothing against showing kids horror films. I think it desensitises them.
Yeah.
Because there was something recent. I was around I can't remember whose house it was, but their kids there. And don't put that on because it's scary. And I think that's not even a horror film. It's like a PG, whatever it was. I think that's scary. That's silly. By this point, Lily's been watched all that stuff, and she enjoys getting scared. Yeah. Because that's the thing. Getting scared is fun.
As long as you know it ain't real.
No.
As long as it ain't like real, like sort of things that could happen.
Because some people look at it wrong. They go, like people we know, adults, go, I can't watch horror films. And you go, but it's the same reason I watch a comedy. I watch a comedy to laugh because it makes you. It's a natural thing. And getting scared, you're like, oh god, that's scary.
It's very rare.
It's your heart
scares
racing
me nowadays, but sometimes things do, and you feel like, oh fucking hell, why am I scared? I'm getting scared, and it's
a
like
bit
really
creepy.
unusual. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be in the right environment and the right surroundings, and probably usually on your own.
But we'll each put our cases forward, and we'll let the viewers decide in the comments. So please like, subscribe, share, and comment.
Share.
And bye-bye.
Share. See you later. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.